sure you all are familiar. Hallie was just giving away an Emotiv a minute ago. And I was going to introduce you guys with a formal introduction here, but I don't think I need to because I think people know who you are. I did want to, though, point out a little bit about what's going on with wearables. And I, as a participatory sort of journalist, have for many years jumped in, and I don't quite yet have that vest and the socks and the headgear and all that I would love to be wearing as a complete and total geek journalist as well, measuring every which way. So that's not quite ready yet. But this market is growing rapidly, and in fact, it looks like according to ABI, there are about 16.2 million of these wearable devices that are in the digital health space that are out there right now, or at least that was in 2011. They're talking about 93 million in 2017. I assume this is in the US. I find that to be sort of not really optimistic enough in 2017. I got to believe that we'll have more of those devices. The numbers, too, seem small. 123 million in 2010 in this market, 341 million by 2016. But really, if you think about it, the whole idea of how we measure what we're doing, while it's a little bit far out right now, it's going to be core, I believe, to medicine in the future. And the dream is, in fact, in 15 years from now, 20, 25 years, we're in the very early stages on a lot of these technologies right now. But eventually, hopefully, we will have literally embedded in our clothes. You might wear a little headband that the Emotiv becomes very compact and small. And all of this will be available. And most people who, by the way, are not quantified self-geeks, who don't really want to spend a lot of time monitoring themselves, but it will be very easy for them as well. And people will have this, and this information will be downloaded and sent. And you won't really hear about it unless something pops up. Watch this, or maybe something pops up with your doctor or some kind of healthcare person. But part of what I want to talk to you guys about is how we get to that world. And maybe we can start with describing what you're doing now, but in the context of, where we are now in a kind of pioneering phase. But how do we reach that golden moment in the future?
Sure. I think there's several things. And these different pillars of wearability design really underlie much of what we're doing. But more broadly, when I was first looking at the wearable space 5 years ago or so, I think one of the first things I noticed was that the field is kind of a misnomer. Wearables are not that wearables. And we're very much in this 1.0 phase where the type of things that are out there, the kind of relationships that you strike with a product are more like, if you wear this, then I will give you this data. Well, all right, I'll wear it. It's not a very consensual type of relationship. Okay, and what I think will help make all these product categories, this product category be more, I guess, closer to people's hearts, will be one of, I think, three things. One is if the kind of relationship you can have with the product will be will be more consensual, where it's like, yeah, I totally wear that, and well, what does it do? Okay, so that would be great if we can get to that point where there's a desirability factor that's really powerful. I think the other two things is, second is if there's a secondary function that these products can have, can it give you support? Will it make you feel cooler? Will it complement your fashion? Will it protect you from the elements? Will there be a second function where it's like, okay, I'll wear it, and I know it's not working, but I'll still wear it. And I think the third thing is battery life. That's one of the things that's going to I'm not saying it's going to kill wearables, but it's really the bane of our existence. And to the extent that you don't have to require charging, that'd be great, because the desire to wear these products are still a little controversial. It's like, well, I don't know if I want to wear this. I definitely want to charge my Mac, okay, and I definitely want to charge my iPhone and my iPad, but an activity tracker, I'm not sure. But if I don't have to charge it, great. So I think those are three. Like, if we can nail those three things. Great wearability, no charging, and secondary function, then I think we're a lot closer to, mainstream usage.
That's actually a very interesting sort of functional question. I mean, I've reached my limit, really, in how many things I can charge and keep track of, especially when I travel. Hopefully someday it'll all be integrated. But Tan, what are you working on in your...
I completely agree with you, Sonny. When we entered this space, it wasn't just a wearables issue, because as you probably know, if you want to measure your brain, there's no way around it. We can't sense it from a distance, so you have to wear something. And so the moment we wanted to deal with this and tackle this issue, we had to confront the fact that people would have to wear something. And I think, you know, you're looking at innovations in brain measurement and monitoring. It's very, very early stages. We're just kickstarting. We're in the 8th day of our Kickstarter campaign for our 2nd generation device. I think it's a lot more wearable than our 1st generation product. But it's going to take, I think, you know, 3 iterations before we're going to get to a point where it's going to be as fashionable and as comfortable as this, because it's something that you have to wear on your head, and the battery life obviously is a big challenge. You know, how do we send the information wirelessly? Wireless consumes a ton of bandwidth, and the amount of data we're sending as well from the brain is immense. I mean, we're trying to get high fidelity, multi-channel spatial resolution of the brain, and so it does require, you know, quite a lot of battery life. So a lot of good challenges there as we look towards the next decade, but for sure I think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I would imagine wearing like some big solar reflector, make you look even weirder with your with all this headgear on. So, you know, I think some of these devices are becoming very, very sort of sexy, and you know, the shine, I think, is pretty cool. In fact, just saw my first one just a second ago. I've seen pictures of it and videos of it. I mean, I don't even know how it works. It's just this little thing that looks like a quarter. You press on it and these lights come on. I mean, it's an amazing piece of technology and kind of cool. But what practical things can we learn from these devices right now? I mean, are they very early stage where they're more fun, like a Google Earth? Wow, there's my house. You know, there's where I grew up. And then what do you do with it after that?
You know, I think, so accelerometers are quite basic. I mean, they're like the most basic physical sensor that's out there. And so, and that's what we're all using. We probably all pretty much use the same chipset for that matter, same suppliers, I bet. But there's actually quite a bit of information you can get from these sensors, from accelerometers, which is what everybody has. And it's really a matter of how you can squeeze out. I would almost say there may be 2 levels of analytics you can get. You know, there's like conversion from voltage signals and acceleration vectors into, you know, how many steps or how far did you go, you know. And then there's the 2nd level of analysis where you're trying to figure out, oh, you're, you know, really active on Fridays, but Saturdays, you know, you need to get your butt moving. I'm not saying you, but, you know,
You're looking at tan.
She looks like she's in great shape, so okay, maybe it's about. But the idea is it's the 2nd order, so both problems exist and both are tough, you know. And so we're trying to hit that first layer, just being able to make the information usable and understandable, but to really deliver insights and actionable things that you can do, that's hard, you know, and that's going to take time. That's going to take a lot of data. It's going to take a lot of participation, you know. So it will come. It's just a matter of deployment of this hardware and being able to aggregate the data and blah blah blah.
Yeah, we have a different problem on our end, which is the devices are not as wearable, but we can derive a lot of meaningful data from the data that we're gathering. And so that's the other side of the equation, right? You have a device that has really great fidelity, it has good data, you can get information about your attention, your focus, your stress levels, your relaxation levels, your interest, you can control stuff with it, you can move, you know, will it with mental commands. So you can do a lot of things with it, but how do you get people to wear it? So that's our challenge. So I think, yeah, we're
you're giving them a lot more. I mean, brain waves as opposed to motion.
Right.
So that's, I mean, I think people are willing to say, all right, I'll wear it. It's cool. Actually, the next generation one looks really neat.
Yeah,
know?
thanks. I think we like it too.
So what about, it's funny, I don't know if Susan is still here, but I actually went to see my doctor at UCSF yesterday, and as I was sitting there waiting, I've been taking my EKG with my little sensors, my live core sensors, you know, pretty much every place I go, keeping track of it, and I'm sitting there checking out my pulse as I'm about to see my doctor, and my doctor walks in and goes, "What's that?" And I showed it to him, and he goes, wow, that's really cool. I've never seen one of those. And he called out in the hall, because he's actually a friend, too. He called in a couple of other docs, the PA. They're all looking, wow. And, you know, UCSF is one of our top facilities in the world. And I just wonder how do we connect this up with those people? I mean, they're willing. And there's just this huge gap, really, between getting these new technologies. And I know, Tan, you're doing a lot of, working with a lot of researchers. But how do you create a situation where that becomes useful and even get access to the mainstream medicine?
Well, we started first working with developers and researchers. I think we didn't really try and tackle the consumer community right off the bat, because I think it really requires democratization of this space so that you can create more meaningful applications from the data that we can gather from these EEG systems. And so we do have a large community of users that are research-based, that have used it in rehabilitation, that have used it with patients, have used it in productivity analysis. And so a lot of these second-generation products have come from the engagement with the community over the last 3 years. And so that's certainly helped. But it takes a long time. It takes a long time to evangelize. I mean, San Francisco, we're in the heart of the early adopter community, and yet sometimes when I talk about our technology, people say, wow, can you really do that? So we've been around for a little while. The products have been out for a little while, but still, it takes time before people will, hear about it, try it.
And also coming up with the compelling use cases that are like, oh my gosh, I would totally use it. I would totally do whatever just to be able to get that. I think it takes time too. I've been wearing this smartwatch that one of these watchmakers gave me, and it's taken me about a week to figure out, oh, okay, here are like some really compelling use cases of it.
Yeah. Also, how do you both deal with the fact that there still is not a lot of standardized data around this? I mean, my AliveCore here, for instance, it's really just random data at this point, because almost all the data, if you look at scientific studies around EKGs, it's you go into your doctor's office, you get hooked up, with electrodes to a machine. It's a stationary one-time test. But this real-time, I mean, one of the amazing things about wearable technologies is the technology allows us to have real-time monitoring, and it's going to get even more interesting. But it's a bit ahead of the ability of people to really understand that. And I wonder how, I mean, again, you're working with the research community, but how do we overcome that particular gap?
So mine is a bit easier. EEG's been around since the 1930s. There are a lot of clinical EEG systems that are in the tens of thousands of dollars. We have, we have dozens of independent peer-reviewed articles taking our system, compare it to a clinical system, and have similar results. So I think that we're comfortable with the fidelity and the output of our system in terms of the quality. I think where we can improve is in the mobile portable EEG space, right? So when people are moving, you're introducing gait information, you're introducing noise, movement. When people are sitting in a conference room and talking to each other, you're introducing things that in a clinical environment they do not have. And so whilst you benchmark against a clinical system, you have the same results. What happens when people are using it in the real world, everyday situation? And so, our solution to that is to provide a massive amount of data on mobile EEG and give it to the community and say, here's the data, let's together crowdsource, fix it, clean it. How can we use machine learning algorithms and better feature extraction methodologies to really clean up this data set and find ways to deal with mobile EEG? But I think we have a problem set that is somewhat easier to deal with because it's been around for a long time and we can benchmark against other systems.
Right. And I wonder when you two are going to get together to, maybe wear both devices at the same time. And
Do a hardware swap.
Yeah, we'll
right.
do that.
Well, no, I'm not a swap. Do it.
Integration.
If you're talking about gait and,
Totally.
are there? I mean, this is one of the interesting uses of this kind of technology. Of course, is it's so new. We don't really know what you'll find out, and you start integrating these technologies and finding out what happens. I mean, what does your gait, for instance, you mentioned? Well, you can actually measure it with the Shine, and maybe link those two and see if there's some correlations. But so back on just the everyday usage of this. Are you seeing a lot of acceptance of your products? I mean, thinking more now in a kind of market or business side.
Well, you know, we've...
I know you just launched, so that's not
Yeah, yeah.
entirely
So
a fair
we-
question, but
yeah, yeah.
in
So
the last
we-
24 hours, what's the acceptance? Yes.
Not bad, not bad. We've the thing is, you know, we focused on wearability and so on elegance and battery life at almost at the cost of everything else. Mainly because we know the limitation of accelerometers. It's going to measure intensity of motion and duration, and that's it. And to answer your point, just to address real quickly the point about data interoperability and exchange or whatever. I think there's going to be an evolution, and it's going to be, I think in some ways, market-driven by just who are the leading players in this space. You know, we love the feel points kind of approach to things, just because, you know, I think we're graduating away from just pure step counting. You know, that's why everyone's saying activity monitor now rather than pedometers, and it's because life is a lot more than just steps. You know, part of the problem of swimming, you know, let's take swimming for example. You know, if you wore some of the pedometers out there right now, they'll tell you, I mean, there's two issues. One, you have to throw it away afterwards because it's not waterproof. But we actually waterproofed them and swam with them, and it told us how many steps that you swam. And it's just not meaningful. I mean, this is like a first order issue of non-meaningfulness, you know? It's like you want to know how, you know, maybe how many laps you did and how many minutes you were in the pool and how many times you swam last week. You know, but cardio kickboxing, you don't want to know how many miles you cardio kickboxed. You want to know, you know, how many calories and how long and how many times you did it last week. And so I think this, so even in the most basic sensor space where we're measuring motion, even that we're seeing some evolution where we're moving beyond steps. And, you know, so we're going to see that happen, and that's because people are realizing that life is more than just steps.
And Tan, well, how about Emotiv? What sort of market has that established?
So the first generation product has got a 50,000+ user base, so it's small. I think the second generation device, we're 8 days into our campaign. We've raised, what, $600,000 so far. So it's exciting. It looks like the community really likes this product. They have heard about the first generation product. They know what they have been able to do with it. So the second generation one is gaining momentum. I think we've really spent a lot of time doing R&D and engineering with the sensor technology to really address this core problem of usability and while maintaining that spatial resolution of the brain. And so I think we will get to a better point. The value, though, of even this community of 50,000+ users is really quite incredible, because when you think about it, there's not really any EEG system out there in the marketplace that has that many people. So if they collectively share that data through a process of informed consent, we can start to put together some very, very meaningful bioinformatics. So I think it's exciting. It's an interesting area, and there's not a lot of players right now in this space. So yes, it's an interesting space to watch.
In fact, I'm seeing more about design, it seems like, with some of the companies that make headgear for various researchers and all that, more about design than actually trying to interface
Right.
much with the consumer. And that was you're on Kickstarter?
Kickstarter.
Okay, so that congratulations so far.
Thanks.
That sounds good.
Thanks.
Everybody go check that out. Anyway, on this theme of marketing and how one raises money, in fact, I'm seeing a trend that's been going on for a little while and is improving a bit, but especially among venture capitalists, but others, you get this divide between IT and software, that sort of pure IT side, and biology and biotech. And I think both of you guys come more from the IT side or the design side, but how do you mesh those together? Have you found that that's been a challenge? In other words, you go talk to the IT VCs or the investors and they get the IT side, but what's all this about biology? I mean, and they get a little nervous out of their comfort zone, and then vice versa. Have you found that to be a challenge or an issue?
Well, even just at the consumer level, we're seeing that market reception is different between different types of people and different types of, like we love the quantified self community group. We love elite athletes. Shine works great for them, but it is so not the place where we're going to focus any sort of outreach, mainly because the expectation in some ways is quite low. It's all about functionality. But the rest of the world, Oklahoma City, I always say Oklahoma City because I'm from there. And,
I come from Kansas. Be careful.
all right, well, you know, the Red River. Oh no, you're north of us. But you know, so we love like women. We love talking to women about it because many of the women that we've talked to care about design, and that's the first thing that they're asking. Like, oh yeah, I totally wear that. Well, what does it do now? You know, and we love that. It's, but then when we show it to like some tech editor, they're like, well, it doesn't measure my steps going up the stairs. So, does it have heart rate? I'm like, you know, that's not what it's about. It's about a device that hopefully will inspire people to be more active. And yeah, you can get more information when you get on the app. And yes, the algorithms are actually more accurate, et cetera. But that's not the point of this product. You know, we're trying to make this as mainstream of a product as possible that folks in Oklahoma City and Kansas would enjoy wearing it and not have to ask the question, well, will it show? You know, say, well, hopefully it will. And so that's been the focus of that first product. And we've got other products coming along. You know, we've got another product which we'll announce this fall. A lot more sensors, a lot more data. You'll get a lot of it, but it's more on the invisible side. You know, and we've always thought if you're going to get people to wear stuff, it either has to be gorgeous or it needs to be invisible. And there isn't a whole lot in between. Otherwise, it's the same kind of relationship. All right, fine, I'll wear it.
I think that's a major point. In fact, you know, when you get outside of this rather small group of quantified selfers and others, most of whom, you know, are among those in this room, I think most people do want it to be just passive, you know, something that is just embedded in whatever their T-shirt, and you know, they never really see it. And we're a long way from that. Although there are getting to be some interesting technologies with the elderly. You know, some sensors built. These aren't usually wearable, although some of them are. But the sense of an elderly person falls, or you know, if there's some change in their patterns of movement around the house.
I think on the venture side, there's a shift right now, an interest in wearable devices, not so much from a hardware standpoint, because I think hardware, I moved to the Bay Area about 8 years ago, and hardware for a long time was a dirty word. No one wanted to touch it. I think the resurgence in interest in hardware, especially around biosensing, is because of the data quality that you can get from this, because there's only so much you control from the internet, and that already has established players. But the body itself, the human body, has an immense amount of information in there, right? And so how you're going to get that information out unless you have biosensors. And so there is a shift. If you pivot if your business is around how can the hardware facilitate a relationship between the user and the data, then I think that transforms the nature of the engagement with the venture. So
just real quickly, do you think this figure from ABI of a $360 million market in 2016, that seems small to me, but what do you guys think? The overall market on wearables and biosensors?
Seems small to me. It might, yeah,
I'd be surprised if you didn't say that, by the way.
It seems small to me. I think a lot of that, if you look at just Fitbit alone, I mean, that's probably half of that.
Yeah.
So if you look at Up, you look at Nike Fuelband, Shine, and then you look at all of the other Pebble and all of the other Watches My Basis. There's so many different products out there, just quantifying physical health, not even touching into the cognitive and mental health space. I think it's probably a little bit of an underwhelming number.
The number is 360 in 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah, that number is like that this year. If you add up the revenue of the players that you're talking about, it's already more than that.
Yeah, I mean, the whole personalized health space, which is
Yeah.
part of, is approaching $500 billion. So, you know, I think this will be a kind of core source for all the data that feeds into that system. But I would be a bad journalist if I didn't mention what would happen if, say, Edward Snowden got a hold of my blood pressure or my heart rate, you know, that was being fed through the cloud into my app and to my doctor. Are any concerns along those lines? You know, that who gets this data? I mean, we are all techno optimists, but there are an awful lot of people out there that fear this data will fall into the wrong hands. I wonder what you all think about that.
Our policy is that the data belongs to the user, so it's very simple for us. You know, we don't have any...
We thought our phone records and
Sure.
emails did too.
Sure, absolutely. And I mean, you're going to have to safeguard it as best you can, but, you know, ultimately, what can you do, right? You try to be as HIPAA compliant as you can be with all of the anonymization of the data. You allow the users to own their data. I mean, that's the benchmark today in terms of the gold standard. We'll keep trying as long as we'll watch every other player out there to see what the best practices are and maintain at that level. But really, it's an evolving space, and we need to understand that we're pioneers in a evolving area. So the best that you can do is to ensure that you stay connected, have a conversation with the community, and stay engaged and keep learning.
Yeah, the short of it is I think it's going to come just like physical violations of privacy and security. It really comes down to motivation, why people would want the data and what they're going to do with it, with your data, because we live in a world full of incredibly insecure communication protocols, wireless and wireline. I mean, the fact that we can, somebody can break into someone's nuclear reactor halfway around the world, make it blow up. I mean, I'm sure there were like tons of massively secure gateways that they had to break through, and they did it. And so it's just a matter of motivation. If they wanted to break in, they could. And I mean, there are like supposedly highly secure insulin pumps that got hacked in within minutes, on stage. There was, and so it's gonna. So I don't know what to say about that.
Well, I think, yeah.
Other than,
Sorry to put you guys on the spot, because it's actually not your job. I mean, you're the entrepreneurs. I think you need to think about it and be aware of it, and not certainly be sideswiped. when somebody is an Edward Snowden shows up with all the theta waves that are collected by Emotiv. But it's something our society has to deal with. We've dealt with this before. I mean, I always talk about the invention of fire. There are pluses and minuses when we figured out fire. It can be really destructive, but it can be really helpful. And, we figured out ways mostly to deal with that. And in fact, what I wanted to end with, and maybe we have time for one or two questions, is the idea of the opportunity here. This is really in the early stages in most cases with these technologies. And that's another area. In fact, security, as well as the engineering, the entrepreneurial activities, this is a wide open space. And, I would encourage everybody to look into it, and, I think that make that number much bigger than the 360 millions, okay? Thank you.